North Korea's threats have dominated a phone call this morning between Australia's Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and US President Donald Trump. It's the third time the two leaders have spoken by phone and appears to have been a far warmer conversation than their first call earlier this year, as Anne Barker reports.
The Prime Minister's office says the Trump-Turnbull phone call lasted about half an hour and was dominated by North Korea. It came days after the rogue state carried out its sixth and most powerful nuclear test. Both Malcolm Turnbull and Donald Trump agreed Kim Jong-un's regime represents a grave threat to regional stability and that now is the time for the international community to exert maximum diplomatic and economic pressure on Pyongyang. The Prime Minister discussed the call at a press conference in Canberra.
It was a very good call, very warm discussion, very constructive. Naturally, we focused on the threat posed by North Korea. We are absolutely of the one mind in condemning this reckless conduct. We discussed the importance of the full enforcement of the current sanctions regime and the importance of additional sanctions, which of course are under consideration at the moment, being imposed in the future.
The Australian PM and Donald Trump also agreed that China is the country with the greatest leverage over North Korea, but with that leverage comes the greatest responsibility. They both welcomed Beijing's support for UN sanctions, but agreed that China, as North Korea's biggest ally and trade partner, must use its substantial economic influence to bring Pyongyang to its senses and restore stability on the Korean peninsula.
China does have the greatest leverage by far, and we will both continue to encourage China to bring more economic pressure to bear on North Korea to bring this regime to its senses.
China and Russia supported the UN sanctions imposed early last month, although Russia's President Vladimir Putin has expressed scepticism as to whether they'll do anything to deter North Korea from developing weapons of mass destruction. The use of all types of sanctions in this particular case is useless and inefficient, the Russian leader said. As I've told one of my colleagues yesterday, they'll rather eat grass than abandon this program if they don't feel safe. President Putin also warned that any escalation of military action against North Korea would be disastrous. Under these circumstances, winding up of military hysteria will not bring us any good, he said. All of this could lead to a global catastrophe on the planet and huge number of human casualties. There's no other way apart from a peaceful and a diplomatic one to resolve the North Korean nuclear problem. Donald Trump and Malcolm Turnbull also discussed other threats to national and international security, namely the threat posed by Islamist extremism, particularly in the Philippines, where the Islamic State group has seized the southern city of Marawi. Both leaders stressed that ISIS must be stopped from gaining a foothold in Southeast Asia.
Of course, as you know, both Australia and the United States are providing assistance to the Philippines government in that struggle to clear that ISIL insurgency out of Marawi.
Malcolm Turnbull also expressed Australia's sympathy for the loss of life and damage caused by Hurricane Harvey in Texas and acknowledged the leadership shown by the Trump administration and the resilience of the American people in response. Both leaders also talked about increasing cooperation and collaboration on how better to protect communities from natural disasters. The White House is yet to make any comment on the call.
Anne Barker reporting.